In this video I'm going to unpack my entire tackle box, which is actually a backpack for easier portaging. Covered lures of course, but also things like tools and terminal tackle. I'm going to unpack everything here. Got extraction tools on top, so let's start with that. Some long nose pliers. These are lightweight ones as opposed to like a heavy duty plier from a toolbox. This one has a really long neck, so if you have a pike that's deeply hooked, you can get way back there and then it closes the jaws with this clamp here. It can be really handy. I almost never use it, but when I need it, I'm really glad I have it. Another extraction tool that I don't think is in most tackle boxes, jaw spreaders. So this is primarily for pike or for muskie, but I don't fish muskie waters much. If the pike's taking that lure deep, you can stick these in there and it'll hold the jaws apart. You can see if these were the jaws, if I let go, it kind of spreads them apart and it'll hold it open while you extract the hook. And then this is a jaw gripping tool, which Aaron's dad just gave me last winter. I haven't had a chance to use it last Christmas. And I'm excited to use that this year. Instead of reaching your fingers around the gill plate, which you can potentially damage its gills, its red fleshy gills, you can just stick this in its mouth and it'll grab on for you. So I'll report back on that. A little weigh scale and measuring tape. I never really use this, so I should really stop bringing this excess weight. Not to mention the scale is not accurate. So yeah, I haven't opened up my entire tackle box for a long time, so I'm just gonna get rid of that one. This is a dipsy diver, or actually a mini dipsy. You attach your lure to it and it'll get your lure down quite deep. So if you're fishing for lake trout, it can get you close to the thermocline. This one I believe dives 20 feet, so that's not that deep, but it can do the trick. You can also use a three-way swivel. My filleting knife, nothing special. I think it's a Lure Jensen. Came from a tackle shop. Nothing crazy. Some Stanley's Ice Off paste. You can apply this to your fishing line in the winter and it'll help keep ice off, but I find when it's really cold there's just no getting around the fact that your line is going to ice up. Some plastic bags. I keep these handy for transporting fish if I can't eat it immediately. It's just something to hold the fish in until I do. Now here is a wire leader for reference. This one's actually pretty flexible. I'm not sure what material it is, but it's not that bad. The steel leaders will really tear up a pike's mouth if you're using a wire leader for pike, and that will damage their mouths. So what I've opted for is an 80-pound fluorocarbon leader. Fluorocarbon is supposed to be invisible underwater, so an extra advantage there. But I really only need that for big pike. I feel like everything I'm saying is for big pike. I've got some backup line here. I have a different video on my favorite fishing rod and what reel and line I put on it. But here is some 30-pound braid and some light 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. I typically use a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader, again for pike, so I don't get bit off so much. Soft plastics. Got some little squirm and shad it's called, but essentially any paddle tail, soft plastic paddle tail will do. It's my favorite style of soft plastic. These guys are great. A paddle tail has this big flat spot on the back of it, and that causes the tail to kick like a real minnow. It's very realistic and tantalizing. I've got some pink worms, which I don't really use. I don't fish steelhead. Some larger paddle tails. Love these. More pink worms. Okay, there's a couple other things I can get out of my tackle box. More paddle tails. Told you I like paddle tails a lot. Tubes are phenomenal bait. Underutilized, I'd say, by a lot of anglers, including myself. Sometimes I forget about them, but amazing for bass, for lake trout, anything. And some odds and ends in here. Crawfish, another tube, a little curly tail. Curly tails are great too. I don't have to use paddle tails. I'm pretty happy with the curly tail as well. Either one's great. Okay, now for the fun stuff. Let's get into the lures. A big curly tail. If I'm fishing for big fish, like big pike, I might go with something like this. This is the Storm 360. great casting lure, search bait, just fan cast it all around. Big paddle tail, I love these Freedom Hydro jig heads. You rig them through the neck of the plastic and then around here down in the body, and then you can tuck the hook in if you want to make it weedless, and when a fish bites that, it'll still get the hook, it'll dig it out of that plastic. Some jig flies from Mighty Mitch and Jungle Joe down the highway. Beautiful handmade lures here in Ontario. Paddle tail. Paddle tail. This one is a more lightweight one, rigged with the weight underneath. So these I can kind of work along slowly, whereas one like this will fall if I stop casting it. So if I want to kind of almost jerk bait style retrieve this, then that's a lighter weight one that'll kind of hold its position and suspend. Really love these little Northland flasher jigs, because as you're retrieving them, this little spoon on the front is dancing around, and it kind of looks like a little pectoral fin powering the fish along. Again, back to the tube jigs. This is a tube jig specific jig. It looks like this. And you just stick it right up the keister of the tube, and that eyelet sticks out like so, just enough, and then the hook's back here. The hook's nice and far back, so you're not getting short bit so much. You can see I've got a couple of silica gel packs in here. I hope that works. I would think it would, just to try and absorb moisture and reduce rust on hooks. More paddle tails, more tubes, just different sizes. Again, that Northland flasher jig, absolutely key. Some spares, spare hooks, nothing I haven't mentioned already. Here I've got some kind of insect imitators, and this cicada, it's glow in the dark for one, and two, it really flutters around when you let it fall or rip it up. This is the Jiggin' Wrap. It's got this wing on the back, which is broken, but it still works fairly well, and it causes it to move horizontally, so it shoots out when you jig up. It makes it fly off to the side. This is the Sebile Vibrato. Such a great lure. Tons of vibration off of it when you rip it up. It just vibrates in there. Swedish Pimple. Tiny little spoon, Blue Fox 1/8 ounce spoon. And here I've got my lipless cranks, and these I love for summer lake trout especially. Just cast them deep, balm them out, let the lure fall deep, perhaps to bottom, and then rip jig up to surface. And that can be a great way of getting lakers when they're deep. But a great lure for a range of fish and seasons. The Kamuki Smartfish, a nice looking one. This weight makes the hook end stand up, so the fish can bite that when it comes to gobble it up. And then some smaller ones. These can be very effective for ice fishing as well, these lipless crankbaits. Really like those, and they can catch big fish. It's surprising. You don't always need big lures to catch big fish. And then I've got a few favorite spoons here. This is a Live Target Flutter spoon, I think it's called. A couple of Williams Wobblers, and a couple of Little Cleos. Probably my favorite spoon, the Little Cleo. In these little containers I've got some terminal tackles, so some hooks, and you can tell it's like orange from rust. I don't really use standalone hooks at all because I don't fish with live bait and I don't fish with cut bait, so I don't really need to use those ever. But this one I use frequently. These are my snaps and snap swivels. I rarely use snap swivels anymore. If you're fishing something that's going to be twisting around, like if you're trolling a spoon that's going to be fluttering around and around and around on the axis, then you might need a swivel, but typically I'm just using a rather small crankbait snap like that, and that's what I attach my lures to so that I can change them quickly. And then this larger tray is primarily reserved for crankbaits, which I use a lot because I troll a lot, and I want to use different crankbaits to achieve different depths and different profiles. Start with the non-crankbaits here. Frog, weedless frog. The hooks are on top, of course, so that they don't catch it on the lily pads if that's what you're fishing, and then when the fish bites it, exposes the hooks. All of these hooks are pinched and barbless. Jitterbug, I grew up fishing. That's what my dad put me on the jitterbug, because it stayed on the surface and it wasn't always catching the weeds, because you know how annoying that can be with kids if they're constantly snagging. This crazy guy, I think it's called a dancing eel. It's actually I never use it, but I should. It's got an incredible action on it. Again, silica gel packs, trying to absorb moisture. Got a range of like mid-depth crankbaits here. They're mostly the Rapalas. This is a cotton cordell that Aaron found in Quetico. This one is a Matsuo, really nice. It's even got some like red, fleshy looking stuff in behind the mock gill plates. This swim bait floats. Got it at Walmart on a whim, and this also has a beautiful action in the water, just like this, and it stays on top. So I use this sometimes for trolling in shallow water, because yeah, it's just such a great action that it doesn't require it to dive. Got some smaller minnow baits, Storm Thin Fin, and a Berkeley Flicker Shad. This is a great lure. The Berkeley Flicker series. No, I have no affiliation with Berkeley. They're just they're really affordable lures compared to wraps, and I love them. Here are a couple others. These are the Flicker Minnow Deep, and a couple of different patterns. Excellent lures. These ones dive about 20 feet. This one's I think about 18 feet, and this one can surpass 20. So you can reach down pretty deep into the water column with these. Live target perch, live target. I'm not sure what the name of this one is, but classic like smelt bait fish imitation. Rapala Shadow Wrap in perch pattern. This is a classic in my mind. The Rapala Husky Jerk. You can troll it effectively, or you can do a jerkbait style. A couple other larger minnow baits that don't run too deep, and then some that really do run deep. These ones, this is a Husky Jerk as well, but it's jointed, so it has a real kick to the back end, and this one's quite a lot deeper. Caught my biggest fish ever on this, but it was really a fluke. I caught a 20-pound channel catfish in Georgian Bay on this. Couldn't believe it. A couple other deep diving crankbaits. Generally, the longer the lip, the deeper it's going to dive. This is a Storm. I don't even know what this one is. They're just probably from those bargain bins that you find at tackle stores. And then a range of inline spinners, different sizes and styles. Blue Fox and Meps, Black Fury, of course. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are all the lures I bring. I've got it down to 2 trays, and you know, the second one isn't that large, so I used to have 5, so I'm pretty happy with getting it down to this number. A lot of people would consider this much tackle excessive for canoe tripping, but for me it's too hard to give up. I don't want to be left on a trip wishing I had this lure. Here's that 20-pound fluoro that I like, 100% leader material, Seagar. I'll close off with these items, which are not in my tackle box, but they are a crucial part of my kit. This Frabill wading net, for me, it's just the perfect net. I love taking it on canoe trips. It's good for the fish because it has a basket, it's basket style, so it's nice and supportive on the bottom. It's got like a flat area here to support them. It's rubberized, so it's not cutting into their skin and risk stripping away their protective slime, as opposed to a fabric net, which can be very damaging to fish. It's also just a great size, and you can fit a surprisingly large fish in here. I mean, huge pike can go in here. Again, this is turning into the pike episode. It's got a nice short handle, so you're not dealing with some massive handle in the canoe, because you're pretty much at the water line in the canoe when you're fishing from the seat. You don't need a long handle to dip down like you do in a motorboat. So really love this net. And then this item is truly invaluable to me for fishing. I would rather take 5 lures and have this than leave this behind and have my entire tackle box. It's that valuable to me. I'll do a separate video on this because it deserves it, so that'll be coming up real soon.